Hello and welcome to the Brawl League's top 15 picks for Brawl for Outlaws of Thunder Junction. I am Kane,
And I'm Hazor.
and today we figured that we'll start doing what we usually do, only this time a little different. Normally we do a top 12, but because of the way the list cards and the wanted card style things were, we decided to just merge them all together into one big list rather than make two multiple videos.
Yeah, and the reason we chose top 15 instead of doing two videos is that the main set just does not have enough cards that we were happy with putting in a top 12. So we just combined them both into the top 15 cards from both the bonus sheets and the main set here. Yeah,
And I know we just said we have a top 15, but we do have an honorable mention. Bristly Bill, Spine Sower. For one in a green, you get a legendary creature, Plant Druid. Landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target player. And for 5 mana, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Now, I think that in general, this card is really nice. You get a Lotus Cobra effect per land, which and also pairs well in styles like Luminarch Aspirant, in which you're slowly growing a creature. It doubly is effective with fetch lands type situation because then you can make things grow from a 1/1 to a 3/3 in a single turn, which can be very lethal. And honestly, it's definitely gonna be at least play tested in some decks like a Souza or even Nissa. We
yeah,
just figured. I guess I'll let you.
yeah. I don't really see this as an Azusa card. It is basically Luminarch Aspirant, but in green. In that it is like a cheap two-drop body that does put at least one counter on a creature every turn. I think it's like I'm thinking more it goes into any one counter deck really. Also things like I know people have been playing some kind of Ajani decks, like the green-white aggro type of decks that those will want to play this too. That's the main
Indeed.
places I see this going in.
Well, now that we got all that out of the way, let's start off with our top 15. Would you like to lead us on?
Yes. In the 15th spot, we have Fractured Identity. It's 3 white and blue for a sorcery that says exile target non-land permanent. Each player other than its controller creates a token that's a copy of it. Uh, Basically, I see this card being played just as a general Azorius card because it's just a 2-for-1 for 5 mana, and you can just take whatever big thing your opponent has just played after you've used the rest of your counter spells and stuff on your curve, and then you'll just take it for yourself. Just a solid card.
Honestly, I really do agree with this type of situation. Like right now, I think that removal decks type situation gonna are right now in the league struggling with Tajik because of the indestructible haste and getting an extra body every turn due to things like Cavernous Souls giving it can't be counted or the small aggro stuff already making it a field open because you had to use a field wipe anyway. Here, you can with Fractured Identity, you get to take just their top end card, make your own copy of it, and just beat them to death with their own commander. What's not to like about it?
That's a very fair analysis. Yeah, just usually the top end cards are played because they're generally good, and taking them for yourself is generally good.
Speaking of commanders, number 14 is Savala, Eager Trailblazer. For two green and a white, you get a legendary creature, Elf Scout, with Vigilance. And whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until the end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. And you can tap her to choose a color and add 1 mana of that color for each different powers among creatures you control. Now, Savala is basically like a Torrens type situation in which every time you cast, you get a body type situation. The difference is, though, she's made to be able to do better payoffs. He was all about getting a bunch of soldiers to train and smack, whereas she's just trying to get you ramping into the biggest spells. I do think that in general, she might not see as much play as people would want, but at the same time, she's definitely going to leave impact in certain decks. Like recently, some people have been brew testing Amara and stuff like that, and I think that she will make good plays in the 99 of those.
Yep. Yeah, definitely a good 99 piece and a lot of token decks that rely on creatures to make tokens. Uh, Honestly, I think it could also just be a solid commander. Maybe not like a top commander, but just generally solid as it is an above rate body that pays off on you casting creatures. So it could be good in a type of aggressive shell as a somewhat top end piece that lets you dump whatever's left in your hand after to get value. Just like an above rate card, really.
Above rate and above the list.
Yep. All right, our next card is Abrupt Decay. It is black and green for an instant. This spell can't be countered. Destroy target non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less. This card is already a staple in other formats, and it's pretty easy to see why. It's just that it's 2 mana, you can destroy literally anything that's not a land that has mana value 3 or less, and it can't be countered, so that means it isn't stopped by things like Ward, any kind of counter spells, uh, yeah, pretty much those things, but with Ward being super common now, it definitely has that first line of text has a lot of use, and so this is just going to be a staple in Golgari.
It's definitely is going to be just very useful overall. Good removal in Golgari is sometimes harder to get as a whole. Like you mostly get mono black removal as the type of situation, or even just fight spells with the green. But with Abrupt K, it's basically like another assassin's trophy, except this time you don't give your opponent a ramp when you use it. Sure, it doesn't hit everything above a certain mana, but at the same time, you're still ahead in the curve with it.
Yeah, and the Golgari does have those aforementioned mono black removal spells to hit those things of higher mana value.
Exactly. Moving on, we are going with Phantom Interference. For one blue instant, we have our first spree spell, you have to choose one or more additional causes, in which the causes are +3 to create a 2/2 white spear token creature with flying, and +1 counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. It's basically just a mana leak type style spell, where it's a counter spell for unless they pay 2. It's really good on curve type situation, but it's also not a dead card late in the game because if you get to 4 mana and you don't need to use it as a removal spell, you can use it to make a spirit to be slowly beating your opponent down. Or if really late game, you could just use it as both a counter spell and to get a creature. Honestly, for a common, it is insane.
Yeah, I already really love Make Disappear in Historic Brawl, and this is effectively a Make Disappear side grade, because Make Disappear has the upside of Casualty to maybe counter a bigger spell if you sacrifice a creature. This one is more for the control decks, in that if you don't have a creature to normally sacrifice off Make Disappear, you can instead make this flying creature later in the game to just be a nuisance to your opponent and possibly even close out the game. This is in addition to your on-rate, Quench variant that is just already a solid card. So yeah, just a solid card that I think will still play in a lot of blue decks. All right, moving on, we have Desert. It is a land desert. Wow, so surprising. It taps for colorless mana, and it also taps to deal 1 damage to target attacking creature, but you can only activate it during the end of combat step. I personally like Desert as playable in control decks or Azusa or something like that. Uh, Essentially to kill Ragavan, really. That's the main target of Desert. But it can also kill a lot of the aggressive one drops. The notable downside is that you can only kill said aggressive one drops after they've done damage to you. So any damage triggers like Ragavan or just damage that they do to you, you'll still have to take to kill them. However, it is a free removal effect on a land, which is always good.
Yeah, as a whole, I'm not really into the big appeal for it. But in general, that's mostly because I usually play aggro decks, so I feel like a land that gives no color, but can just be used as removal feels kind of weaker compared to things like Blast Zone, which can take out 2 to 3 creatures at once. And but at the same time, I do see in situations like with against Teferi, they might try to use it as a way because they can either keep the mana up for counter magic and then have the desert used to ping off the small things that they're taking away slowly. I'm not exactly a control player, so I'm not really exactly able to say this is good for control player or this is bad for control. But but I believe Hazard has played more control decks overall, and even has won with a control deck at one point. Haven't you?
It's a little closer to a combo deck, but I don't know. There's a lot of discussion going on whether or not Desert is playable in hard control Teferi or not. I personally am a big supporter of it being played. Uh,
Only one, only one way to find out. Win with it.
yep, that's true.
Moving on to number 10 on our list is Insatiable Avarice. For 1 black mana, you get a sorcery with Spree, which is +2, search your library for a card, shuffle, and put that card on top. And black, for target player draws 3 cards and loses 3 life. Now, this is a pretty good card in mono black in general. Like, so a lot of people go, oh, it's sorcery. Why would you want to do that thing? But in general, you're going to get draw 3 for 3 mana in black is very good. Pairs well with things like Sheoldred, Davros, styles like that, which gave you life for the amount of cards you draw. And in general, putting a card on top of your library can be the difference of having and not having a field wipe available.
Yeah, definitely draw 3 through 4/3 is always a very strong right, and so every mono black deck that can play these 3 black pips is going to be playing this card. And in a pinch, it can be a tutor for that one card you need. Or even better, if you somehow are able to pay the 5 mana, it can be you draw 3 cards and one of them is any card you want from your deck, because you can pay multiple spree costs on the same spell. So just a general, it has so many modes that basically it's always going to do something that you want it to do.
Here's the thing, a lot of people wouldn't want to say, oh, you shouldn't run this in a 3-4 color deck because of the double black thing, but in general, 3 mana, search your library for any card and put on top is insane, even for things like Atraxa.
No, it's not as good as like something like Grim Tutor would be, but its modality definitely helps it a lot.
Grim Tutor has it put in your hand, you lose 2 life, and all its thing, and costs double black. This is just 1 and 2 black, only 1 black and 2.
Yeah.
So they have different style.
Yeah, for sure. There's upsides and downsides. Anyway. Yeah, moving on, we have Stoneforge Mystic. It's 1 and a white for a creature core artificer. It's a 1/2. Once Stoneforge Mystic enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And for 1 white and tap, you may put an equipment card from your hand onto the battlefield. This is here because it's obviously a very strong card. It's played in many formats. Being able to find any equipment and put it on the field for just 2 mana at instant speed and uncounterable is really, really strong. The only reason it's so far down the list is that equipment decks are just not good usually in this format. So unless you're playing just it to search for Embercleave or something, it doesn't have that many homes really.
Another thing to take note of is in general, Stoneforge Mystic kind of doesn't have its payoffs in this format either. You don't have like Batterskull or Culture Complete in this yet in this format. Here's hoping we'll get some good equipment in Modern Horizon 3, but at the same time, it's probably going to be a card that'll see more play the longer arena is around.
For sure.
All right, moving on. We got for number 8, Pillage the Bog. For black and a green, you get a sorcery that looks at the top X cards of your library, where X is twice the number of lands you control. Put one of them in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And plot 1 black-green, which is where you pay the plot cost to exile it. Then later on, you can cast it free, but you can only do it at sorcery speed. In general, Pillage the Bog is honestly one of the most interesting searchers around. There's like a card called Assemble the Team from the Analchemy set that lets you look at 1/3 of your library. This can, so in general, that would be like if you started the library at 92, plus your draw 1, so, or just let's say 90, and you look at the top third, and you have at least 10 lands, you're looking at 20 cards. Of course, that's not likely to happen because how the heck would that have happened to have 90 cards in deck and you only have 10 lands, 5 land. Well, you know what I'm saying. Basically, it gets better the longer the game goes, and even then, you can even cast it for free, and you just get so much value.
Yeah, as Grimson said, the best comparison is Assemble the Team. This probably being slightly worse because it does see less cards than Assemble the Team does. even then, Assemble the Team is a massive format staple that you're playing in pretty much every deck that plays Golgari, and this one is really only slightly worse because later in the game it is still 2 mana to effectively look at the top 10 plus cards of your library and pick a card from among them, which is just absurd card selection. And then being able to plot it when you don't have anything else to do and cast it on a later turn when you really want is just upside.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, moving on, we have another 2-drop white creature. We have Grand Abolisher. It is white for a 2/2 human cleric. With during your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. Basically, it's a white counter spell blocker, is what it's mostly going to be used for this format, and also removal blocker. It's kind of like Tithe Taker, which is already played a lot. I actually think in this format, Tithe Taker might be a little better, even though Tithe Taker isn't a hard stop. It does have Afterlife, leaving behind that 1/1 spirit when it dies. This kind of just doesn't do that, and is also a 2 white cost. However, the effect it has is just really strong, where you're against a control deck or something, they just won't be able to remove your creatures at instant speed.
In general, a lot of people will remember the card Miro, Shield of Archive from Brothers War. It has basically the same ability as Grand Abolisher, but and does see play despite being a 4-drop. Grand Abolisher comes out down as a 2-drop type situation and keeps control of the board a majority of the time.
Yeah.
Like, there are combo decks that just use Grand Abolisher just because it says you can't interrupt my combo now.
For sure. Yeah, and yeah, it'll probably be played in aggro. Definitely, I don't know what white decks are using combos. Probably white decks that are using combos
Oswald?
will do it. Yeah, oh, for sure, Oswald. Yep, there you go. Yeah, decks like that just want to rely on your opponent not interacting.
All right. Moving on to number 6. We got another white card, Avid Interrupter. For 1 and double white, you get a bird rogue that has flash, flying, and when it enters the battlefield, exile target spell, it becomes plotted, and spells your opponents cast from graveyards or from exile cost 2 more to cast. So basically, this is like a reprieve on a body.
Yeah.
Now, naturally, it's not going to be as good as Reprieve in some ways, because Reprieve replaces itself. Your opponent can still use the spell a thing. Sure, it's going to cost them 2 mana. But if they remove the Even Interrupter, they could just cast it for free again. So it's, in a sense, it's definitely going to see a lot more play than some other things. But at the same time, it's definitely more of a situational card overall. You want to use it so that you could stop the spell that turn, and then try to go in for lethal.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to why I can't think of it right now for some reason. It's the spirit that's 1 white and a blue, and exiles a spell of mana value 4 or less when it enters.
Spellcaller?
Spellcaller, thank you. Yeah, that card. It's pretty similar to that one. In that it is a flash flyer that will interrupt your opponent's spell. The main difference between this one and Spellcaller is that it exiles any spell, even those greater than 4 mana. Your opponents have to pay 2 to cast it again, but they can cast it without removing the interrupter. If they do remove the interrupter, they can cast it for free. Most notably, however, they can only cast the spells at sorcery speed that even interrupter interrupts. And so any counterspell that is interrupted by this card is just done. So it is also just a white creature that can counter a counterspell.
Good. Going to be definitely see play and Adeline and other stuff like that.
Yep. Moving on, we have Harvester of Misery. 3 black for a creature spirit. It has Menace and is a 5/4. And it has whenever Harvester of Misery enters the battlefield, other creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. And 1 black, discard Harvester of Misery. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Just a very, very strong mono black card. You'll play it in black control decks because it's a cheap removal spell, but also combos with a board wipe on the other side. It's effectively a double-sided card. And then also in Reanimator decks, it's really easy to get into your graveyard as a removal spell, and then things like Sunfoot and Squee will bring it back and immediately kill an entire aggro board. Just things like that. It has many uses and is just all around such good value on a card.
A lot of talk about like just having removal in black is kind of trickier with type situation because you don't get many board wipes in black. Then now you're just going to get one that's also a body. It will go around from killing things like Shealdred and stuff, but in return, you just get something that always impacts the field.
Yep, 5/4 Menace is very big. It's been compared to Massacre Girl, which is very relevant because Massacre Girl really just needs a 1/1 to do anything, and this one has a better stat line. Just kills anything toughness 2 or less, but not higher, and is a removal spell when you want it to be. So it's better than that card, and Massacre Girl already was seeing play in the format. So this one will also see
Getting
play.
moving on, we got now the number 4, 3 steps ahead. For blue, instant with spree, where 1 in a blue, counter target spell. 3, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control. 2, draw 2 cards and discard a card. It's basically a good blue spell in general. A lot of people think about the counter spell thing, and we'll go back to the one that we mentioned previously that was spree, where it had like a quench effect. And we'll go, why is this one higher than that? Well, in general, I believe that this card can just see more better play because there's like Hedron of the Archives type cards like that, artifacts that give you value when they enter the battlefield and stuff will give you more abilities. You can just copy creatures that you steal type situations. So you steal a Tajik, you use this spell to just get a clone of Tajik, you put the other Tajik into the graveyard type due to Legends ruling and stuff like that. I just think in general, this card just has so many values that you can choose whatever you want that it's never really a dead card.
Uh, yeah, I'd say this as a like a Supreme Will side grade basically. Supreme Will saw more play than Make Disappear, which is why I have it higher on the list than this. But effectively, it has the counterspell and card selection of Supreme Will. Both halves are better. Really, the counterspell it does require an extra pip, but it's a hard counter. Your opponent can't pay to get out of it. And the card selection lets you discard a card from the cards that you already had in your hand before casting the spell, so you can get rid of something unusable. And then the copy token mode is just complete upside. If you do have an artifact or creature you really want copied, then you can also do that too. And so it has all this modality, and it's also just a better card than already playable cards, which is why it has earned this spot on the list. All right,
Indeed.
moving on, we have a pretty well-known card. It's Reanimate, 1 black mana for a sorcery. Put a target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its mana value. Just the best reanimate spell of all time, probably. You can put anything from any graveyard onto the battlefield under 1 mana, for 1 mana. So placing your Slamfoot and Squee, 1 mana, you get your Atali out from your graveyard. But even then, some possible plays, you can Swamp Cycle Troll of Kaza Doom on turn 1. Play this on turn 2, you have a 6/5 Super Menace on the board, and that's probably not even the best case scenario. I don't know. It's really easy to get massive bodies on the board super early with this card.
There's a reason why the decks are called reanimator decks type situation in general. This is the reanimation card. It is the most iconic. It still sees play even in some formats like Legacy and all that. And not to mention in general, the loss of life is usually minuscule in the grand scheme. Like, oh no, I bring back Emrakul, Ulamog, lose 10 life. Anyway, I'm swinging for 10 exiling your library for 20 cards each time.
Yeah. It's like,
All
what?
for one, just for a simple cost.
Yeah, yeah. If you're bringing back something big, you aren't going to notice the life cost, which is the biggest upside to this card. It's basically reverse Swords to Plowshares.
Moving on, we got our number 2 on the list, and if it is Prismatic Vista. For land, you tap it, pay a life, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle.
Yeah.
Fetch lands are a big staple in Brawl right now. And this one is basically Fable Passage, which already sees play, but delaying comes in untapped. So for Ono, you lose a life, again, minuscule, compared to the fact that you could just sometimes end up having that 1 color pip you need for your able to cast that 1 spell you have in hand. That you would normally have to wait a whole turn because Fable Passage would bring it in untapped.
Yep.
It's definitely going to see a lot more play than a lot of people think, but at the same time, I think that it's mostly going to see play in Brawl over other things. So don't go crafting like crazy with it.
Yeah, for sure. It'll probably see more play in Brawl than Historic, where you can run entire mana bases of shock lands and stuff. However, I don't think in Brawl, I think every single deck in Brawl probably wants to run this card, except for maybe 5-color decks. if you're running one basic of every color, you just want to play this card. No question. It's perfect mana fixing, and that's pretty much it.
Simple. Sometimes the simplest explanations are the best.
Yep. And our number 1 card is Mana Drain. Blue instant, counter target spell. At the beginning of your next main phase, add an amount of colorless equal to that spell's mana value. It's counterspell with upside. Counterspell is a format staple played in every blue deck. This is that, but better, and is in fact so good that we decided to pre-ban it in the competitive league here, because it's above the power level of everything we have in the format.
In general, it's another reason why a lot of people thought of banning it right away type situation. It can also be stated with Wizard's statement on Mana Drain, where they were up to discussion of banning it in themselves in Brawl, which is very interesting to think about because Wizards barely touches Brawl for any bannings or unbanning type situation. They think since it's a casual format, they want to leave it as simple as possible. So they rarely ban cards unless the ban makes sense and doesn't change how the card functions. And that can essentially they don't want to ban cards that they can easily errata.
Yeah, it's like this card it combines Counterspell and Dark Ritual, which are both format staples, and they're played in almost every deck that includes their colors. Just some play patterns that are easy to think of. You play Teferi, you counter your opponent's Arcane Signet or any 2-drop they play, boom, Teferi turn 3. You play Atraxa, counter any opponent's 3-drop, boom, turn 4 Atraxa. It's just like, you can turbo out pretty much anything
You
just by
can
playing this
use
on
it
curve. Yeah.
use it to with a treasure on your own treasure cruise to get bam 8 mana right there on your next turn, which then lets you cast Ulamog, exile this stuff, or just in general anything. It's a really silly card,
I can't
really
wait for a
powerful,
Simic deck to
and
do that to me.
and I can't wait to use it at least in the queue.
Yeah, for sure. I just expect every blue deck you see to be playing this card in queue. It's so broken, and honestly,
Like walked
might
away.
just win every game it's played in. Yeah.
And so that's our list for Outlaws of Thunder Junction.
Yep.
We're glad that you could come and watch us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Yep. See you
Con
later.
Kane?